As the world gradually adjusts to the new normal, a resurgence of COVID-19 looms across Asia. From the densely populated urban centers of Southeast Asia to major cities in Northeast Asia, rising infection rates are becoming increasingly apparent. The pressing question now is whether Asia can stave off a new pandemic wave, or will it face yet another serious blow just as its economies and societies are struggling to recover. Meanwhile, the Middle East is once again simmering like a dormant volcano on the brink of eruption. Houthi rockets have been launched at Israel amid a historic visit by former U.S. President Donald Trump. Iran, defying predictions, issued sharp rebukes and escalated its preparations for a potentially intense confrontation amid stalled negotiations with Washington. In North Africa, Libya has turned into a new hotspot as its capital plunges into chaos following the assassination of a top security commander. The government claims to have retaken the city after a bloody night of violence, with dozens of high-risk prisoners escaping from the eastern suburbs. The unrest has spread to the Prime Minister's office, triggering fierce public protests. In Eastern Europe, President Vladimir Putin is executing a high-stakes gambit, ensnaring Ukraine and the West just ahead of critical negotiations. France is quietly mulling over the return of the nuclear specter to the skies of Europe, a sign that history may be repeating itself, but with greater destructive potential, putting the continent on the brink of existential tension. You're watching This Week in the World, and I'm Chuyên. As some Asian countries begin to report a resurgence of COVID-19 cases, regional health authorities are stepping up surveillance amid fears of a renewed outbreak. Singapore, Thailand, China, and Taiwan, key trade and transport hubs, are under close watch.
In Singapore, authorities are closely monitoring a sudden spike in cases. Although there is no current evidence that new variants are more transmissible or more severe, the numbers are concerning. Between April 27th and May 3rd, the city-state recorded an estimated 14,200 new cases, a sharp increase from 11,100 the previous week. In Thailand, Public Health Minister Somsak Thepsutin has urged the public not to panic, classifying COVID-19 as an endemic disease with mostly mild symptoms. From January 1st to May 10th, the country reported 53,676 cases and 16 deaths, with Bangkok being the most heavily affected. Weekly new infections dropped to 12,543 between May 4th and 10th.
In China, data from the National CDC showed a sharp increase in COVID-19 positivity among patients with flu-like symptoms, rising from 7.5% to 16.2% between March 31st and May 4th. Taiwan is also seeing a steady surge. Between May 4th and 10th, the island reported 9,900 emergency and outpatient visits for COVID-19, up 66% from the previous week, marking the fifth consecutive week of rising infections.
According to Li Chialin, Deputy Director of Taiwan's Epidemic Intelligence Center, while the number is still lower than the over 23,000 cases recorded during the same period in 2023, the current outbreak is escalating faster and appears more dangerous. Between May 6th and 11th, Taiwan reported 6 deaths and 34 severe cases, figures that have triggered heightened alert levels across the healthcare system. Deputy CDC Director Lo Yi-chun warned that the number of cases has reached nearly 40% of last year's peak and could hit its high point as early as June, almost a month earlier than the July 2023 peak, which saw 134,000 consultations per week.
Vietnam's Ministry of Health has provided an update on the country's COVID-19 status as concerns rise over fresh outbreaks across several parts of Asia.
Since the beginning of 2025, Vietnam has recorded 148 scattered COVID-19 cases across 27 provinces and cities, with no reported fatalities. Ho Chi Minh City leads the count with 51 cases, followed by Hai Phong, 21, Hanoi, 19, Nha An, 17, and Bac Ninh, 14. Compared to the same period in 2024, HCMC has seen an 83% drop in infections, and no cases have required respiratory support. However, infections have shown a slight uptick since mid-April. In week 19, May 5th to 11th, the city reported 16 new cases, an increase of 10 over the average of the previous 4 weeks. Authorities confirmed that no outbreak clusters have been detected so far.
The Ministry of Health has warned of a potential rise in infections due to increased travel during the April 30th and May 1st holiday period. However, the number of severe cases is not expected to increase. The public has been advised to continue following preventive measures, such as wearing masks in public, avoiding large gatherings, practicing good hygiene, and seeking medical attention if symptoms appear. Those returning from outbreak areas are urged to self-monitor and help protect both themselves and the community. And although the world has largely shifted to a post-pandemic mindset, the SARS-CoV-2 virus continues to circulate, infecting tens of thousands of people in 2025 alone. Despite the lifting of most control measures, unexpected outbreaks still pose public health challenges.
COVID-19 now mostly causes mild illness in healthy young individuals, but it remains particularly dangerous for the elderly, those with chronic conditions such as diabetes or cancer, the immunocompromised, or people living in vulnerable socioeconomic conditions. In the UK, for instance, people in the poorest neighborhoods are twice as likely to be hospitalized for infectious diseases as those in wealthier areas. So what are the most common COVID-19 symptoms in 2025? Typical signs include fever, cough, sore throat, runny nose, and difficulty breathing. Some newer variants, especially JN.1, are associated with loss or changes in smell, a hallmark symptom from the early pandemic days. While symptoms have become milder compared to variants like Delta, the virus continues to spread efficiently and subtly undermines the immune system. How long does a COVID infection last in 2025? Experts say most infections last 7 to 10 days, particularly in cases with mild to moderate symptoms. However, people may become contagious up to 48 hours before symptoms appear, and remain so for up to 10 days. Long-lasting symptoms are more common among the unvaccinated and those with underlying health conditions. A UK-based study involving 5,000 healthcare workers found that individuals reinfected for a second or third time tended to recover more quickly and experienced fewer lingering effects such as fatigue compared to their first infection.
Vaccination remains the most effective method of prevention, significantly reducing the risk of severe illness and long COVID. Recent data shows that vaccines can lower the risk of developing long COVID by up to 27% if administered prior to infection. As tensions in the Middle East simmer beneath a fragile ceasefire, the region risks sliding back into violent conflict. In Yemen, the Iran-backed Houthi movement, after a period of relative quiet following a truce with the U.S., has resumed its aggressive stance. On May 13, the group launched a barrage of ballistic missiles at Israeli territory, coinciding with a high-profile visit to the region by U.S. President Donald Trump.
According to Al Masirah TV, a media outlet affiliated with the Houthis, the strike was carried out in solidarity with the Palestinian people, as fighting continues in Gaza. Israel's military said the missiles were intercepted over central Israel by its multi-layered missile defense system, including the domestically developed Arrow system and the U.S. deployed Terminal High Altitude Area Defense, THAAD platform.
No casualties or damage were reported, according to Reuters. However, the attack prompted a temporary closure of airspace over Tel Aviv and disrupted operations at Ben Gurion International Airport for nearly an hour.
Houthi military spokesperson Yahya Sariyah claimed the group had used a new type of ballistic missile capable of penetrating Israel's defense systems, and vowed that further attacks would follow unless Tel Aviv ceases its aggression in Gaza. This latest strike is part of a broader escalation, with the Houthis having targeted Israel with missiles and drones since the eruption of the Israel-Palestine conflict in October 2023. According to the Wall Street Journal, the Houthis, armed with Iranian-supplied long-range ballistic missiles with ranges of up to 2,000 kilometers, now possess advanced weapons, including the so-called hypersonic Khaybar-Shekin missile.
Despite being labeled as guerrilla insurgency, the Houthi movement has demonstrated growing military capabilities in recent years, particularly in the realm of air defense. According to Avia, pro-Houthi forces recently came close to downing a U.S. Air Force F-35A Lightning No. 2 stealth jet during an incident over Yemeni airspace. Several F-16C fighter jets were also reportedly targeted.
The Pentagon confirmed that the attack was thwarted thanks to the pilot's evasive maneuvers and advanced electronic countermeasures on board the aircraft. Nonetheless, the encounter has raised concerns about the increasing threat posed by the Houthis to Western military assets. According to Arab media outlets, including Al Mayadeen, the surface-to-air missiles used in the attempted shootdown may have been supplied by Iran, underscoring the group's continuing reliance on external military support.
In response to sustained Houthi aggression, Washington had earlier announced an end to its airstrikes targeting the group's fortified positions and weapons caches. However, the U.S. is not withdrawing entirely. Instead, it is adjusting its posture, redeploying B-52H Stratofortress bombers to Diego Garcia in the Indian Ocean, replacing the costlier stealth B-2A Spirit bombers.
Reuters reports that this move allows the U.S. to maintain a military presence in the region while reducing the risk to its most advanced aircraft. The long-range strike capability of the B-52H enables the U.S. to launch precision attacks from beyond the reach of Houthi air defenses.
Tensions between the United States and Iran have flared once again following scathing remarks by U.S. President Donald Trump during a speech in Riyadh, Saudi Arabia. Trump labeled Iran the most destabilizing force in the region and accused Iran's leadership of looting the wealth of its people to fund proxy militars across the Middle East.
The response from Tehran was swift and forceful. On May 14th, Iranian President Masoud Pezeshkian declared, "We will not bow to any bully," sending a clear and defiant message to Washington. In a televised address, Pezeshkian criticized Trump directly. He thinks he can come here, shout slogans, and scare us into submission. We'd rather sacrifice ourselves for a greater cause than lie down and die. He came to threaten us. We will not yield.
Iran's Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi also slammed Trump's remarks, calling them blatant deception. Speaking on the sidelines of a cabinet meeting, Araghchi said, "After over 40 years of sanctions, military and economic pressure, it is the United States, not Iran, that is responsible for our economic difficulties."
The rhetorical clash comes just days after the fourth round of nuclear negotiations between Iran and the U.S. in Muscat, Oman. Tehran described the talks as difficult but constructive, while Washington struck a more optimistic tone. Foreign Minister Araghchi rebuked Trump's contradictory approach, applying maximum pressure during the negotiations and then blaming Iran's economy immediately afterward is deeply disingenuous. He also rejected U.S. accusations of Iranian interference in the region, countering that Israel poses the real threat through its continuous bombings and killings in Gaza. The U.S. campaign to portray Iran as a menace is nothing more than a dangerous distortion of reality, Iraqi said, reiterating Tehran's commitment to continued diplomatic dialogue and awaiting Oman's announcement of the next round of talks.
Beyond its verbal salvos, Iran is now backing its political rhetoric with military readiness. According to Iran's state-run IRNA news agency, the country's armed forces have been placed on the highest level of combat and intelligence alert.
Chief of the Armed Forces, Major General Mohammad Bagheri, warned that if conflict erupts, Iran will determine how and where it ends. His comments come amid a deteriorating backdrop following the fourth round of nuclear talks between Tehran and Washington in Oman. Efforts to revive the 2015 nuclear deal are faltering, with President Trump threatening military action if no new agreement is reached. General Bagheri stated that Iran is fully capable and prepared to counter any act of aggression. He said Tehran's military readiness includes strategic intelligence gathering, detailed battle planning, and scenario-based response strategies. If the enemy commits a miscalculation or dares to act against our sacred territories, our armed forces will respond decisively, Bagheri warned.
In a stunning diplomatic move, the U.S. President Donald Trump announced the complete lifting of all sanctions on Syria and expressed openness to normalizing relations with the Damascus government. The announcement came during a Gulf summit held in Riyadh on May 14, where Trump met Syrian President Ahmed al-Sharia.
Speaking at the summit alongside Saudi Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman and Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan, Trump stated that the U.S. decision followed a series of productive discussions on regional stability and cooperation. Saudi state television aired footage of Trump and al-Sharia shaking hands under the watchful eye of the Crown Prince, a symbolic moment signaling a potential policy shift in Washington. A White House spokesperson later confirmed that President Trump had also urged his Syrian counterpart to take steps toward normalizing ties with Israel. Despite lingering concerns within the U.S. administration over Syria's past links to terrorist organizations such as al-Qaeda, Trump reaffirmed on May 13th that his administration would move ahead with lifting sanctions. The decision marks a major departure from decades of U.S. policy toward Syria. Observers say this unexpected reversal reflects Trump's broader strategy of reshaping America's posture in the Middle East, prioritizing direct engagement and transactional diplomacy, even with longtime adversaries.
The long-standing alliance between the United States and Israel faces serious strains as recent diplomatic moves by Washington have sparked sharp criticisms in Tel Aviv. The source of tension stems from the U.S. negotiating directly with Hamas to secure the release of Israeli soldier Eden Alexander without prior consultation or coordination with Israeli authorities.
Israeli officials have voiced strong disapproval of what they describe as a sudden and unilateral approach by the Trump administration. Channel 13 News reported that while Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's office has publicly maintained a united front with the U.S., behind the scenes, the picture is far more complicated. Netanyahu convened an emergency meeting on the evening of May 11th with security officials and several ministers following Trump's announcement of the agreement with Hamas. At the meeting, Netanyahu characterized the U.S. move as an attempt to pressure for a more comprehensive deal. Israel's Minister of National Security, Itamar Ben-Gvir, went further, declaring that if the U.S. ignores Israel, the country must ensure no commitments are made to Hamas in its name.
Eden Alexander was released by Hamas on Monday, May 12. The Israeli military confirmed his handover by the Red Cross and his safe return to Israel. In a recorded statement, Netanyahu said he has spoken to President Trump. However, Channel 12 and 13 reported that Israel was not involved in the negotiation or informed beforehand. The Israeli government only received an official notice of the deal on Friday morning.
According to Channel 12, Trump's Middle East envoy Steve Witkoff informed Netanyahu and Strategic Affairs Minister Ron Dermer on the morning of May 11th, after the deal had been finalized. Witkoff presented the decision as a fait accompli, not a subject for discussion. Unnamed sources told Channel 12 that Israel's Chief of Staff, Eyal Zamir, had warned in a prior closed meeting that the U.S. might be moving independently ahead of Trump's Middle East trip. Hamas confirmed the release as part of U.S.-mediated negotiations involving Egypt and Qatar, without direct Israeli participation. An anonymous Israeli official told Channel 13 that the deal created new momentum for further prisoner exchanges, and Israel plans to leverage this opportunity in the coming days. In an interview with Israel's national Khan TV, Amsalem said, "Although Trump has acted in Israel's interests, he is very unpredictable. His stance can change overnight. One day he says one thing. 2 days later, he says the complete opposite. This not only surprises, but also disrupts the long-standing rules governing U.S. Israel relations." According to Al Jazeera, Amsalem criticized Washington for not consulting Israel during negotiations regarding the release of American-Israeli prisoner Idan Alexander. He also reaffirmed that Tel Aviv would not be pressured by Trump to change its stance toward Hamas or accept the creation of a Palestinian state. He declared if Trump pressures Israel to end the war in Gaza and allow Hamas to exist, that will not happen. And if he pushes for a Palestinian state, we will make it clear to him that it's impossible.
Security in Libya is rapidly deteriorating as armed groups vying for power escalate violent confrontations. After years of conflict and instability, the capital city Tripoli has once again plunged into chaos. On the evening of May 12, heavy gunfire broke out following the assassination of a senior military commander affiliated with the United Nations-backed government. According to Al Jazeera, Abdul Ghani At-Kikli, head of the Stability Support Authority (SSA), was killed in a shootout at the 444 Combat Brigade headquarters in southern Tripoli after negotiations between factions collapsed.
Local media report that armed forces were deployed to multiple districts, notably Abu Salim and Mashrou. Witnesses told Al Jazeera that soldiers from the 111 and 444 brigades stormed SSA headquarters, with gunfire and explosions heard throughout the city. No official casualty figures have been released, but social media images show multiple bodies lying on the streets. Medical sources cited by Al Jazeera confirm at least 6 injuries. Authorities have urged residents to stay indoors for safety. Several districts and suburbs closed schools on May 13th until further notice.
Regional media reports that rival militias from the port city of Misrata, about 200 kilometers east of Tripoli, and other areas have begun moving forces into the capital since last week, raising fears of a wider armed confrontation.
The SSA, established by the Government of National Unity, GNU, in 2021, is tasked with maintaining security and combating organized crime in Tripoli. The UN support mission in Libya, UNSMIL, expressed deep concern over the escalating violence, with heavy weapons being used in populated areas. The mission called on all parties to exercise restraint, immediately cease hostilities, and resolve disputes through dialogue. UNSMIL also warned that attacks targeting civilians and civilian infrastructure could constitute war crimes. Since the 2011 uprising that toppled dictator Muammar Gaddafi, Libya has been mired in political division and conflict. The country remains split between two rival governments: the UN-recognized Government of National Unity, based in Tripoli, Western Libya, and the Tobruk-based administration in the east, controlled by the Haftar faction. Although the situation had stabilized somewhat in recent years, sporadic clashes among militias fighting for territorial control continue to erupt. The most severe recent fighting in Tripoli occurred in August last year, resulting in 55 deaths and nearly 150 injuries. In February, the assassination of Libya's cabinet minister, Adel Juma, sent shockwaves throughout the nation.
Following intense clashes, Libya's Government of National Unity, GNU, declared the conclusion of its military campaign in the capital Tripoli after fully securing the Abu Salim district. This marks a significant victory, as the area had long been a stronghold of the Separatist Support Authority.
Despite the campaign's success in consolidating GNU's authority amid the ongoing political and military crisis, Tripoli remains unstable as opposition forces continue to exert pressure. Al-Hadath TV reported that the GNU seized SSA headquarters, though details regarding casualties and scale of the conflict remain undisclosed. The fighting in Abu Salim caused widespread power outages in Tripoli, worsening the already dire humanitarian situation. New clashes have continued despite the government's announcement. According to multiple sources, militias from Misrata, Zawi, and Zintan have been advancing into the city, indicating that control remains contested.
Amid ongoing instability, dozens of inmates have escaped from a detention center in Tajoura, a suburb east of Tripoli. Authorities report the breakout has raised serious security concerns in the already volatile region.
Judicial police in Tripoli confirmed that clashes near the Al Judeida prison triggered panic among prisoners, leading to the mass escape. Most of the fugitives are considered high-risk offenders, exacerbating fears over public safety.
Just days after violent fighting erupted, new confrontations between security forces and protesters have escalated political and security tensions in Libya's capital. On May 15th, forces loyal to the UN-backed Government of National Unity opened fire on demonstrators gathered outside Prime Minister Abdelhamid Dbeibah's office in Tripoli. The city, already grappling with instability, witnessed widespread protest, with thousands rallying on Green Square, demanding Dbeibah's resignation.
Security forces used weapons to block protesters near the Presidential Council headquarters. Simultaneously, influential armed groups such as the 444 Brigade and Radam Militia engaged in fierce gunfights in port and southern districts, further destabilizing civilian life. The urban warfare involved a range of weapons, from small arms to heavy artillery. An unnamed security official described the clashes as an urban battle, with gunfire and explosions echoing throughout the capital. Reports from rescue teams and local medical units confirm at least 6 fatalities during recent days of violence. The escalating crisis has drawn concern from the United Nations and Western nations, which have called for an immediate cessation of hostilities, an unconditional ceasefire, and protection of civilians. Turkey, a key supporter of Tripoli's government, has urged all parties to swiftly resume negotiations and seek a lasting peaceful resolution to prevent further bloodshed.
In the high-stakes political chess game between Russia and Ukraine, every move carries deep strategic significance, impacting not only the region but the global order. Recently, unexpected moves by Russian President Vladimir Putin have forced Western powers to reconsider their entire approach. Economist Mikhail Kazin argues that Putin has put the West in a difficult position by proposing direct negotiations with Ukraine without preconditions, effectively disrupting the opposition's plans.
The West had planned to issue a 30-day ultimatum demanding a ceasefire, backed by threats of intensified sanctions. However, Putin's call for direct talks on a ceasefire aims to prevent the Ukrainian armed forces from using the pause to regroup. Kazin highlights that Putin initially affirmed his stance of continuing military operations alongside negotiations, signaling that any delays in talks would result in ongoing conflict on the battlefield. The expert asserts that Putin has cleverly undermined the ultimatum prepared by Kiev, London, Berlin, and Paris. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky's immediate declaration of willingness to negotiate in Istanbul, conditional on a prior ceasefire, reveals his reliance on backing forces. According to Kazin, Putin is effectively inviting the leaders of the U.S., Germany, the U.K., and France to clarify who truly controls the situation, an issue causing divisions among Western allies. However, Kazin remains skeptical about the likelihood of successful negotiations in Istanbul, citing Kiev's inability to fully meet commitments. He notes that Zelensky's backers show no intention of taking responsibility for their actions.
Meanwhile, Ukraine's response to the peace talks has been scathing, expressing deep skepticism over Russia's sincerity. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky openly criticized the Russian negotiating team in Istanbul as a puppet show, highlighting what he described as Moscow's lack of seriousness in seeking peace.
The Russian delegation, led by advisor Vladimir Medinsky and Deputy Defense Minister Alexander Fomin, was deemed by observers as low-ranking, casting doubts on the Kremlin's true commitment to the dialogue process. I'm not sure of the Russian delegation's level, but from what we see, it looks like a theatrical performance. We will consider whether to engage with this spectacle or not, Zelensky said. After meeting with President Erdogan, I believe we will have the chance for serious and genuine discussions, not the antics typical of the Russian Empire. He accused Russia of wanting to continue the war, to decide unilaterally who is legitimate and who deserves to live on Ukrainian territory. Zelensky also condemned Russian misinformation campaigns.
Following Zelensky's remarks, Russian Foreign Ministry spokeswoman Maria Zakharova responded sharply. She labeled the Ukrainian president a clown and loser ahead of the Turkey talks.
Who uses words like puppet, a clown, a loser? Someone utterly uneducated, Zakharova said during her weekly press briefing in Moscow. Previously, Zelensky had called on the international community to reject Moscow's sham referenda in occupied territories and urged increased military and financial support for Ukraine's sovereignty. Current negotiations appear bleak as Russia maintains a firm and unyielding stance, dampening hopes for peace.
As security tensions escalate across Europe, regional leaders are urgently seeking strategic solutions to safeguard peace and stability. In a provocative move, French President Emmanuel Macron has challenged traditional limits on European defense policies by signaling readiness to negotiate the deployment of strategic nuclear-capable aircraft within European Union countries.
Speaking on TF1 television, Macron said, "In the coming weeks and months, I will set conditions for discussions on the possibility of deploying nuclear-armed planes outside French territory in EU countries. However, the president emphasized 3 non-negotiable conditions for any such deployment. France will not pay for the security of other nations. Deployments must not weaken French national security. The French president, as commander-in-chief, will always have the final say. This announcement signals a potential shift in France's nuclear posture and reflects growing unease over the evolving security landscape in Europe.
Tensions between Russia and NATO countries have intensified recently, with a significant confrontation unfolding in the Gulf of Finland. On May 14, Estonian naval forces launched an operation to intercept the oil tanker Jaguar, suspected of belonging to Russia's so-called Dark Fleet, a fleet believed to transport crude oil, circumventing international price caps imposed by Western nations.
Russian-aligned telegram channels reported that the Gabon-flagged Jaguar was sailing in international waters when Estonian patrol ships Kurvits and Raju approached with the support of a helicopter, PZL M28 aircraft, and Polish MiG-29 fighters affiliated with NATO. Estonia demanded the tanker change course and enter Estonian territorial waters for inspection. The tanker's captain refused, asserting compliance with international law and intent to continue its voyage. Estonia responded by deploying additional ships and helicopters, reportedly attempting to intimidate the tanker through ramming maneuvers and attempts to board the vessel, actions that were rebuffed. The incident ended when Russian Aerospace Forces Su-35 fighters appeared, escorting the tanker out of Estonian waters back into Russian territory. Russia framed the operation as a defensive action against unauthorized interference and a warning to other parties. Military analyst Thord R. Iverson from Norway's NA assessed that the Jaguar did not comply with Estonia's demands and is currently anchored near Gotland Island within Russian territorial waters in the Gulf of Finland. He confirmed the authenticity of videos released by Russia, which show the Estonian vessels closely trailing the tanker.
Authorities in Germany and Switzerland have arrested 3 Ukrainian nationals accused of plotting bomb attacks using parcel shipments under Russian direction, according to the German Federal Prosecutor's Office on May 14th.
The suspects, identified as Vladislav T., Daniil B., and Yevhen B., allegedly planned to send explosive or incendiary devices from Germany to Ukraine, intended to detonate during transit. Vladislav K. was arrested in Cologne on May 9th, and Daniil B. was detained in Constance on May 10th. Yevhen B. was apprehended in Switzerland and is slated for extradition to Germany. Prosecutors stated that Vladislav T. used GPS devices to map transport routes in Cologne under the direction of Yevhen B., coordinating with Daniil B. for package deliveries. The case has raised concerns over Russia's large-scale sabotage activities in Europe. German security agencies reportedly believe hundreds of Russian agents operate within the country. Moscow has consistently denied all such allegations.
Amid escalating geopolitical tensions in Asia, the United States continues to reinforce its strategic posture and alliances in the region. Recently, Washington deployed an additional squadron of F-35B stealth fighters to Marine Corps Air Station Iwakuni, Japan, enhancing deterrence capabilities against potential military threats from China.
The U.S. Marine Corps confirmed that Iwakuni now hosts 4 F-35B squadrons ready for combat in the Western Pacific. The newly arrived units are part of a rotational deployment program designed to boost rapid response capabilities in the Indo-Pacific's complex operational environment. The F-35B variant features short takeoff and vertical landing capabilities, making it well-suited for forward bases and vessels lacking long runways. In addition to the Marines, F-35Bs, The U.S. Air Force operates F-35As at Kadena Air Base in Okinawa, and the Navy deploys F-35Cs also at Iwakuni. The Pentagon emphasized that the deployment underscores the U.S. commitment under the U.S.-Japan Security Treaty, amid a broader strategy to contain China's influence along the first island chain. Details on the rotational timing of the F-35B squadrons moving from Arizona to Japan remain undisclosed.
Tensions in the East China Sea have surged once again amid escalating sovereignty disputes between China and Japan. On the morning of May 14, 4 armed Chinese Coast Guard ships entered waters surrounding the Senkaku Islands, which are currently administered by Japan but claimed by China as the Jiaoyu Islands.
According to the Japan Coast Guard, the Chinese vessels remained in the area for approximately 2 hours before departing, despite warnings broadcast by Japanese authorities. The Senkaku Diaoyu Islands are uninhabited but remain a flashpoint in the long-running territorial dispute between Japan and China. Since Japan nationalized the islands in 2012, China has stepped up patrols in the region, a move Tokyo views as a unilateral attempt to alter the status quo. China operates more than twice as many Coast Guard vessels, over 1,000 tons, compared to Japan, many equipped with heavy weaponry. China's new Coast Guard law, which allows for the use of force to assert sovereignty, has further heightened Tokyo's concerns. The previous day, Japan expelled a Chinese ocean survey vessel found operating within its exclusive economic zone near Taisho Island, roughly 140 miles away. Beijing defended the patrol as a legitimate rights protection operation under Chinese law.
In the swirling tensions of the Western Pacific, Kadena Air Base, a strategic U.S. stronghold in the region, has recently conducted a series of large-scale, intense exercises demonstrating readiness to confront emerging threats. These drills come amid rising concerns over China's expanding long-range missiles capabilities aimed at U.S. military targets.
Located on Okinawa Island, Japan, Kadena Air Base sits approximately 370 miles from Taiwan, the closest U.S. air base to the island that Beijing claims as its territory. In recent years, China has significantly expanded its arsenal of medium-range ballistic missiles, from about 1,000 to roughly 1,300 units, with ranges up to 1,864 miles, putting most U.S. bases in Japan within striking distance. During the recent exercises, the 355th Expeditionary Fighter Squadron deployed multiple F-35A stealth fighters to simulate power projection from degraded locations, in line with the U.S. Air Force's Agile Combat Employment Strategy. The goal is to complicate enemy targeting and enhance survivability of air forces during sudden conflicts. Notably, these F-35As were rotated in from Eielson Air Force Base in Alaska as part of regular deployments maintaining continuous U.S. combat presence in the area. In parallel with flight operations, technical crews at Kadena practiced rapid runway repair techniques to maintain takeoff and landing capabilities after missile attacks. The drills involved ground and aerial damage assessments by helicopters to identify and swiftly repair impacted zones.
Security concerns near U.S. borders have escalated amid rising U.S.-China tensions. A recent report reveals that a specialized antenna array, known as a circularly disposed antenna array, CDAA, capable of intercepting radio signals from 3,000 to 8,000 miles away, appears to have been constructed at a signals intelligence facility in Bezucan, Cuba. Notably, the facility may be linked to the Chinese military, according to an open-source intelligence analysis by the Washington, D.C.-based Center for Strategic and International Studies.
CSIS reported that satellite imagery from March 2024 shows significant upgrades at the site over the past decade. The location is near a former Soviet-era surveillance facility dating back to the Cold War. Graphics released by CSIS illustrate the extensive antenna fields and a newly installed radome dome, possibly housing radar or other electronic systems for monitoring. The CDAA can collect signals from numerous U.S. military bases, even as far as Washington, D.C., raising alarms about China's espionage reach. Although CSIS found no conclusive evidence that China directly operates the facility, U.S. officials have previously indicated that Beijing has access to intelligence installations in Cuba.
In response to the report, prominent Republican lawmakers in the U.S. House of Representatives wrote to Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem, warning that if unchecked, Chinese activities in Cuba could establish a forward electronic warfare outpost. Such a base would enable intelligence gathering and direct actions undermining U.S. national security interests.
Signatories included House Homeland Security Committee Chair Mark Green and Select Committee on the CCP Chair John Molinar. CSIS stated that the suspected Chinese-linked facilities are located near sensitive U.S. sites, such as Guantanamo Naval Base, Kennedy Space Center, Kings Bay Naval Submarine Base, and Cape Canaveral Space Force Station, potentially allowing China to monitor detection capabilities and electronic profiles of U.S. military assets. Tensions between the U.S. and China are expected to rise on multiple fronts, from trade and the South China Sea to Taiwan. The Trump administration has yet to issue an official response to the CSIS report, and it remains unclear whether Washington will take specific countermeasures.
China continues to assert its military ambitions with strategic, far-reaching moves. According to Newsweek, Beijing has dispatched military forces, including a modern landing ship, to a new naval base in Cambodia to participate in large-scale military exercises near the South China Sea, a region marked by fierce territorial disputes.
Last month, China officially inaugurated its second overseas military base, a joint training and logistics center located at the Ream Naval Base in southwestern Cambodia. The facility is operated jointly by both countries. Cambodia has a coastline along the Gulf of Thailand, connecting to the South China Sea to the southeast. China claims sovereignty over much of this sea, citing historical rights, overlapping with the exclusive economic zones of several Southeast Asian countries, including Vietnam, the Philippines, Malaysia, and Brunei.
The Chinese Ministry of Defense announced that the Golden Dragon 2025 exercises will take place in Cambodia from mid to late May. The drills will encompass counter-terrorism, humanitarian assistance, and disaster relief operations across land, sea, and air domains. This marks the first bilateral exercise supported directly by the Joint Training and Logistics Center at Ream.
The Chinese military reported that participating units arrived at Ream on May 11th, including the Type 071 landing ship CNS Chung Baishan, a large warship capable of transporting up to 800 Marines, approximately 20 amphibious vehicles, and 2 military helicopters. Naval News magazine notes that the Type 071 class is a modern amphibious assault ship, enhancing China's rapid force deployment capabilities. Additionally, images released by the Chinese military show 2 Type 056A escort ships, smaller patrol vessels designed for coastal defense, docked at a newly constructed pier within the Ream Naval Base compound. Naval analyst Alex Luck, currently based in Australia, confirmed the ship's presence in the area.
And that's all for this week in the world. Thank you for tuning in. Goodbye and see you.